with AATCC virtual standards. We're going to be talking about some AATCC testing, why we test, how we create test methods for new test methods, and introduce some things that are very relevant for the 2025 Concept to Consumer Student Design and Merchandising Competition. This year's theme is creating comfort, waterway conscious casual apparel. So we'll be going over some related test methods for that competition. Now, make sure that you guys are signed up with your membership and entries. I believe everything is due April 23rd, so keep that on your calendar. As part of your competition entry, if you are wishing to participate, is part 3, quality and education. So this is a very important section. It's one that students have actually gotten a lot of points off of before. Sometimes people have beautiful design, beautiful, well-organized merchandising portions, and they lose points here. So we want to make sure you guys don't lose points in this section. We're going to be talking about testing today. This event specifically relates to explaining why the testing process is important to design, merchandising, the supply chain, and point of sale. And then also helping you guys maybe come up with some ideas for selecting 2 to 3 AATCC test methods that will be used to verify product claims of comfort and waterway friendliness. Potentially give you a couple ideas of how to explain how the selected test methods ensure your performance or sustainability or quality claims. Of course, attending this event or watching the recording of this event counts for your attendance of at least one AATCC virtual event. Again, hitting these all in this one meeting. Great job, guys. We'd love if you described what you learned in the educational component, and you can actually combine this event with the previous portions of quality 3 or part 3, quality and education. I do want to put a couple things on your radar. We, of course, have other AATCC events coming up. We'll be having another event related to this competition in April. However, something I want to sort of celebrate with you guys is our Fabricating the Future AATCC and SEAMS annual conference. This was previously called Textile Discovery Summit, if that is more familiar to you guys. We're going back to the Westin in Savannah Harbor in Savannah, Georgia, October 5th through 7th, 2025, and there is a discounted student rate. So go ahead and put that on your calendars. We'd love to see you guys there. Now, a couple things, virtual event housekeeping. This is your session, your chance to have questions answered, opinions heard. While the speaker is presenting, please make sure you mute your mics. We will have time for questions. If you have questions, comments, or opinions, please save your questions until the Q&A portion at the end. During the Q&A, you may ask your questions or make comments by speaking up out loud, texting in the chat, or by raising your hand first, and then we'll call on you. Again, we've been asked to record the session. If you don't wish to be recorded, please make sure you mute your webcam, and you can participate via the chat function if you don't want your voice or face recorded. Now I want to introduce today's speakers. They are both alumni of NC State's Wilson College of Textile. So they have been students just like you, and I think they were student members as well. So they have been in your shoes very recently. Carrie Gray is our AATCC Technical Associate who will be presenting today, and she will be supported by Gary Atkinson, who is our AATCC Technical Department Manager. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Carrie.
All right, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, good. Good deal. Just wanna, of course, my computer's wanting to be slow right now, but all right. So is everyone seeing that presentation?
It has just about loaded. Give it 5 more seconds. There you go.
Okay, good deal. So I'll just be covering a little bit from some of the test methods we have and what areas they focus on. And primarily when we're walking through these methods and walking through the different areas, I do want to emphasize that the whole thing about this is like making sure your clothes are not just like meeting the requirements you want for specific, like maybe what specific brands want as the targets for that if you're designing or working in a brand, or if you're on the technical side, maybe picking something that's going to be technically relevant for the end use, but really keeping an eye on that comfort, since if it's a comfortable thing and it's a durable product, you're more likely to wear it more often and less likely to have to buy new things. So getting in, really just reiterating that point of why are standards important. There's several different areas and several different reasons why you would test. The main one that probably comes to mind is quality control, that you want to be testing that fabric once you get it from your mill. You want to be testing throughout that process of developing a fabric. And you'll also be wanting to test to reduce waste in that development stage and make sure that when you actually end up with product from your mill, that it's what you had ordered in the first place. Another big area that testing is pretty common and in front of mind is with compliance. So that way we're looking at, for instance, like FDA testing, seeing that if does this barrier fabric resist the impact of a liquid on it and that sort of stuff. And then also for claims, that this one's a little bit between compliance and quality control, that there's a few things that, like under the FTC, that you have to have a proof to make those claims. So if you've ever seen like a UPF, like on like fishing gear and that sort of stuff, this one, that's a pretty great example of this. That if you were to see something like this will survive, or this garment will hold up to 100 and so washes without any color degradation. That's not really a controlled claim under the FTC, but you could still make that claim. And if someone was to come back and say that it doesn't do that, you'd want to have that testing, just backing that up. So those are the three main areas, and then also just testing for understanding your product and understanding how it works before it ends up in the hands of the user. So you guys are definitely familiar with AATCC at this point, and as you can see in a lot of our materials, that we are an international organization, and there are several, that ASTM, ISO, CIE, that's a lighting standards out of France. There's so many acronyms out there. So that's the traditional, like a lot of the times that you're thinking of with ATCC. But then I also want to highlight that there are internal standards with almost any company you work with is going to have internal standards. Even ATCC, we technically have internal standards that we use. Ours is mainly focused on making sure that the products that we sell is meeting the requirements and is we're doing our own quality control. So those are sort of our internal standards. And internal standards are definitely have their great place, that they're used for product development, quality control. For instance, if you had something new that you needed to test that you didn't feel like any of the existing test methods that you could find worked for it, or even adapting standards such as like changing something, or allowing for a little bit bigger sample size, something like that, to make the international standards work for that specific use case. So just a little bit different. Just keep in mind that when reviewing internal standards, you want to check and make sure that they make logical sense, and that have repeatable results, and that they are based in logic, to where you're not going to end up with useless data by the end of that. All right, so how do we even create these standards? That if you notice when you look at the manual, you'll see that some of them were developed in the 20s, 30s, that way on early in the life of AATCC. And then we've had a few new ones come on the scene. We'll be talking about a fiber fragment one that was developed just a few years ago. And so how do these actually get developed? So I want to preface this by saying we have committee meetings that are twice a year, and those are totally free to join. And since you guys have memberships, you'll be hearing about those more as that date draws closer. That the next meeting will be May 12th through the 15th at the State View Hotel. So super local to you guys. I'm pretty sure the bus goes at least near there. Um, and so don't let it be intimidating. If you guys find this process interesting, we'd love to have you. And um, it really is a great networking experience. And sort of like, don't let it be intimidating. It is not any more intimidating than going to class, because you can go in there, sit at the back row if you want, and you don't have to talk to anybody if you just want to see how it goes. Just join online, listen in, whatever you want to do. So how do we get these methods created? We work with committees that are a bunch of people across different industries, and we have several different committees for the different topics or the different areas of testing. And so someone in those committees or someone from outside the committees that's new to them, really anybody can introduce. And so people bring these ideas forward, and usually if the committee thinks it's a good idea or something that needs to get covered, a draft method will be written. And then that draft method will be presented to committees for approval. Sometimes there's a little bit back and forth because we do work on a consensus basis. So everybody has to approve. And then if there are any negatives or comments put, those have to be addressed before that draft can be approved. And then it goes through another approval process. And this is just to make sure that there's a little bit more committee oversight, since some of these committees are really big with like 50 plus members, and some of them are a little smaller, and just making sure that everything that comes out of the technical committees is technically sound. And so that draft method, after it's gone through those two approval processes, will be approved, and then it's going to be published in the following year's technical manual. And so, and from there, they don't just sit on the shelf. They don't, each test method for the first 5 years of its life is reviewed on a 3-year basis, or so it'll be reviewed 3 years into, or 3 years after it was developed. And that's just a little bit of an early checkpoint to make sure it's still technically sound and that everyone still agrees. And if there were any findings throughout that first 3 years of it being publicly available, it's just a little bit of a check. And then every single method, no matter how old it is, has to be reaffirmed at the very least every 5 years. So very bureaucratic, but at least these steps sort of make sense when you're dealing with international standards. And it is a very democratic process. So any ideas are welcome in this. And I find that it's a pretty conducive space for being able to have some back and forth discussion about these. All right, so starting off with that test method I mentioned earlier, AATCC has this one of the first methods for fiber fragment, for capturing fiber fragments released in simulated home laundering. And essentially what this means is, think about when you're laundering your clothes, and you can see it more on the drier side, that when you pull out that lint, you can imagine some of that lint and, excuse me, those fiber fragments in that case are going to come off when in the wash cycle in that in your wastewater. So this method is developed using a canister, as you can see here, and that canister is used to create a simulated home laundering while also maintaining a closed environment. And then it's So you put all your water, all your rinsing that you do to like rinse out this canister through a vacuum assisted pump or a vacuum assisted filter. And that way it makes it a little bit faster because this filter that you can see, this filter setup is very fine and it's actually using a glass filter. So that way we're capturing as much fiber as possible and you're getting a weight of that. And we worked with the Microfiber Consortium to bring this method about and to make sure everything was as applicable as possible. Um, did I think I have a connection? Oh, can everybody hear me? I thought I'd realized my connection broke up for a second.
Yes, you're good.
Okay, sorry about that. 1 second while I find my window. Go. All right, sorry about that, guys. Okay, back on track. So we worked with the Microfiber Consortium to develop this test method, and um, part of this is just to start even quantifying this problem. That we don't have a ton of good data on how much goes out, so this is a really good starting point to have a database to even begin to quantify that. So where hopefully we can make some smarter decisions with fiber selection, construction selection, that sort of stuff to really eliminate this problem as much as possible because you have a lot of fiber fragments that come off and a lot of those are going to be microplastics. Since if you have like polyester and that sort of stuff, and still, even if it's cotton or a natural other natural fiber, that's still not going to degrade overnight. That's still going to take a few years to degrade, depending on that fiber used. All right, and then one of my favorite parts is looking at color fastness. So, in looking at color fastness, this really helps you gauge like that depending on the use case you're looking at, will it survive that use case and how long is it going to stay vibrant or stay the color you want, depending on what that use case, what environment you intend it to be used in. So, up front, what is color fastness? Is it's two main parts is the color change you experience. So it's not always a fade of color. It can be some like the color might change depending, like if you've ever bleach dyed a black hoodie or a black t-shirt or something, you know how it sometimes fades, or if you bleach it to like that color underneath might be something funky and not what you expect. So with that, we're looking at that color change and then how much does it stain? Because that's another important thing that you don't want like how jeans sometimes if you have light interior like a light couch or something, you don't want that staining all your stuff. And if you've noticed, when you can put things in the washer and wash them on cold, you don't have a lot of those problems of bleeding as much these days. And a lot of that is to thank for color fastness testing. So we've got crocking, which really deals with that rubbing, laundering, a whole host of methods dealing with laundering to capture it in a lot of different ways. And this typically will be a wash and dry cycle simulated that way. And then we also have perspiration. So we even make an simulated sweat solution. Different types of light, such as like when auto interiors, you want to make sure that's not going to fade when your car is out in the sun every single day. And then my personal favorite is chlorine because I don't want to have to buy a new swimsuit all the time when I'm practicing. All right, and then a big one for comfort purposes too is looking at shrinkage, skew, and seam twist. So one of these is you want the clothes that you buy to stay that way. I can't imagine anyone wants their clothes to shrink. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I hardly ever buy a shirt that shrinks anymore. Like used to, it was a minefield out there. You would buy whatever shirt, you love it, and then you get it home and you can't wear it after that because the second you wash it, it's like two sizes too small. And if you look at tags, you'll see like pre-shrunk cotton a lot of times. And these methods have really helped to bring awareness for that and to sort of mitigate that to help the end user. Because you don't want to have to guess at how much it's going to shrink and size up by that amount. That's just asking a lot of consumers. And then SKU, the best way to think about SKU is sort of imagining how it's produced on a machine, that if you have your warp and weft are usually perpendicular. Um, and with that, you want to make sure that in due to whatever factors of torque or just that construction, that it's staying perpendicular and staying how it was intended to. So that's what SKU measures. And if you can see this little diagram below, um, it's sort of gone off that perpendicular axis after laundering. And that can be due to a lot of factors. And then seam twist. We've all had that annoying shirt that the seams have like twisted a little bit, or there's like, especially in stuff like pants, you don't want those seams to shift and feel weird. And because if you have these shifting things happen or shrinkage, that sort of stuff, you're probably not going to wear those clothes and they're not going to have a long lifespan and they just become waste. So we're really trying to eliminate that and helping brands and manufacturers and everybody to eliminate that as much as possible. All right, and then another personal favorite, because we live in the South and it's constantly hot all the time, other than 3 months out of the year. We've got our moisture management methods. So a big, sort of broken up into two categories, that we have drying, which mainly focuses on how that garment is going to dry. And if you notice, each one of the blurbs on that, for the drying rate, TM201, and for this other method, that's TM199 with the moisture analyzer, they're both dealing with body temperature. So you can sort of think of these as if I were to get wet, rain, sweat, what have you, um, that you're able to dry with that body heat. And another thing this can help you figure out too is if you were to buy, let's say, a towel or something that could hold a lot of moisture, or just really anything that you're going to put in the dryer, you want to make sure that it's not going to take you 2 and 3 cycles in the dryer, that once you put it on for a reasonable amount of time in the dryer, you want it to come out feeling somewhat dry or most of the way dry at the very least. So those are two big ones. And the ability to dry is really important in athletic clothes as well. And wicking, especially here, that it gets sweaty in the South. It is, and there's not much help of things drying out or not being like your sweat isn't well utilized when the humidity is 100%. So that's where wicking really comes into place. And with that wicking, you want to make sure that it's traveling across different areas of the fabric. For instance, if you have a different warp and a different weft fiber, that wicking may not be as efficient as it would be with a single type of fiber going in both directions. So there's two different, there's a horizontal wicking and a vertical wicking method, and that way we're just covering the entire behavior of that fabric and really making sure that if we're sending this out to consumers, that it will hopefully wick away as much as we expect it to. All right, so now the scary part. I'm sure you guys all are inundated with hearing about climate change and all the little impacts, and you probably know by now that the textiles industry as much as I love it and as much as I've been in it for years, it is a huge contributor to not only waterway pollution, but just a ton of pollution in general, but definitely really notorious for its impact on waterways. That if you just Google Superfund sites, you'll see, and it's not super fun, unfortunately, super fund with a D. You can see that there's actually a fair amount, even in North Carolina and especially across the Southeast, that these Superfund sites are caused by textiles production. So that's something to really keep in mind that we're responsible for this and we can only make change from the by trying. If you, especially if you're on the inside, that's a great way to make this change. Um, so just a few things to look at is how does it impact the waterways? Um, well, just alone, even today, as manufacturing continues, we're still keeping up this polluting of about 20% of clean water globally. So even as it's being filtered and processed at like water treatment stuff, even as that becomes new clean water, we're still polluting about 20% of that. And even with all the advancements we've had, it's a huge opportunity to sort of um, capture that water because there's no reason that that any contaminated water, any pollutants should be leaving the manufacturing facilities. And we should do our best as consumers as well to make sure that we're disposing of our clothes wisely and trying to avoid some of these more harmful things. Like, luckily, we've finally gotten to the point that a lot of our coatings and a lot of the chemistry that we use with textiles doesn't have things like formaldehyde, but we're still working on the PFAS area. Um, and industrial wastewater is probably the main one. So especially as you move into your careers and everything, if you're in textiles and if you stay that course, um, this is a great opportunity that it's only going to be, if no one speaks up about it, nothing's ever going to change. So in the industry, we have a great opportunity to really limit these PFAS pollutants and a lot of new innovation around this, and C0 chemistry being a highlight at a lot of conferences has been very positive change in the past few years. So it's definitely possible to make a better tomorrow in this stuff. And hopefully we can avoid eating as many microplastics that even if they are in waterways, as soon as that water dries up or they might become airborne another way, you're breathing in microplastics, you're eating them. That I'm sure everybody's had like the food chain drilled into them and everything. So uh, that microplastics have been found in 97% of Americans in blood tests, I believe. And um, you can imagine that all throughout the waterways, um, even like scavengers and stuff are picking up these microplastics in the food they eat. And um, it's even being absorbed in plant material. So there's a huge effort to try to reduce the number of microplastics, even though we'll never get to zero just because they're so synonymous with life that it's looking around and I see so much plastic in my house. Um, but there are ways we can reduce it, and at least very common sense ways. That's the main thing I want to focus on, and especially in the talking about in the what we can do area is it might seem intimidating thinking about how do I make this sustainable. Do what you can. If you have a choice, let's say, of using a waterless dye versus a regular dye, that waterless is most likely going to be more sustainable. And you can just look into a few different things and make sure that that impact is not as much, because that's the whole thing about sustainability. That we can have you can have this greenwashing and you can say that it's a lot more sustainable. But since you guys have this background in textiles, you have a unique opportunity to look into that and see, does this make sense? That are these claims actually having less impact? And that's an important part to look at. So, and then another thing with this is test methods are a great way to reduce this, that might be looking at test methods or testing along your product development part to make sure that when you finally have your when you're doing your prototyping and everything, that those are meeting your expectations. And you might even find ways to reduce impact or make it more durable, um, make it a bit better for the end user, make it more comfortable, that sort of stuff, um, along that process to where you don't end up with as many prototypes needed, or when you do get to that final product, that it's something people want to keep in their closets for a long time, and that they're gonna want to rewear your product and not go out and buy more. All right. And then also there's a few things that are like, keep an eye on some of the innovations coming out. For instance, like I believe there's a cotton, it's a brown cotton, so it's almost like a pre-dyed cotton, by just the cotton having different genetics. We always talk about like natural fibers having color variation, and then what if that's intentional? What if that's bred into the plant? Things like that to sort of reduce that. There's tons of creative ways to reduce um, water usage, as well as making sure that when we have that effluent water, that it is a lot cleaner on the back end. Um, so any ways that we can help you guys out with selecting what methods, we just covered a few today, and I have a little bit of a list here on some of the ones that were directly mentioned. But one thing you can do if you're sort of curious about what method might help you, you can go to our website. If you scan this QR code, it'll actually take you to a document that has all these test methods linked. And when you click on those links, it'll take you to our storefront. And I only did that because it has the scope of what these test methods are covering. And that might be a little, if you don't have the technical manual right in front of you, or you don't want to go to the library and flip through it, that maybe you want to just go on the website and just see if the scope matches what you're looking for. That's another great way to sort of narrow down your options a little bit. And there's all of the test methods linked there. So once you navigate to that page, you'll already be in the storefront. So you can go to that bottom search bar and search whichever test method you're looking for. And so that's it for the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carrie. While we were talking about those slides, especially that last slide, before we get into questions, I just want to emphasize for the competition, we are not asking you guys to perform the test methods. You just need to understand what they're for, right? So we were talking about color fastness earlier and the use cases for that. If you are designing a comfortable, let's say, hiking line for your competition entry, you want to make sure that whatever you design is color fast to light, right? Because you're wearing it outside. That will make sure that your product lasts longer, which will help its sustainability case. If you're maybe making something that is athletic wear, you want to make sure that it is wash fast and isn't releasing a bunch of potentially fiber fragments or microfibers. So that may be where test method 212 comes in. If you're making a comfortable pajama line that's going to be washed more often, you want to make sure it doesn't shrink or skew and be less comfortable over time. Again, think about what you're designing, potentially some of the ways it would be used, again, those use cases that Carrie mentioned earlier. And then check out those test methods, see if there's any that apply, and use them in your entry. So without further ado, if anyone has any questions potentially about anything that was mentioned in the talk earlier or about your own entry and maybe some of the test methods you're considering using for your entry, now is a perfect time. And again, you're welcome to drop it in the chat or raise your hand and we'll call on you to speak up. Give it a few more moments in case anyone. Yes, Janelle. And I don't think we can hear you if you're speaking, if you want to unmute and ask your question. Will we have access to the PowerPoint after the meeting? Yeah, Carrie, if you send me over those slides, we'll post it to the AATCC student community site along with the recording. All right, Janelle, yes.
Thank you so much. So uh, with the casual theme for the competition, does that mean that it can be other things? It can be athleisure, it can be, hiking, like you said, or just something more like loungewear, like, as far as the casual aspect of things. And then
Yeah.
to that, mm-hmm.
Oh no, you can ask the rest of your question, then we'll jump into it.
Oh yeah, and then to that end, as far as the color fastness and things of that nature, and the washing is concerned, that's something that I was interested in doing, since I know that washing and kind of keeping the color seemed like a really important thing to consumers.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the competition theme, casual comfort, it's kind of make of it what you will. I've thankfully seen some entries and people are interpreting it. Some people are doing outdoor gear. I saw someone doing a parka line. Someone's doing sweaters. One person's doing lingerie. There's a whole wide range of how people are interpreting this theme. Again, casual kind of implies a more casual setting for it. So maybe this is hiking, maybe this is chilling at home, maybe this is whatever you throw on when you're running late to class and you need to catch the bus. This isn't necessarily business, professional, formal wear. This is more so what you guys are wearing to class and what you're wearing to hang out too. So hopefully something that you'd be interested in, and then just making sure that you're focusing on comfort, whatever you're designing, that it's something that you know people would want to wear because it feels good. Again, kind of going back into the test methods, you're evaluating for that too, right? You're evaluating to make sure it's comfortable, maybe through shrinkage and skew, and then of course color fastness. So for those, and Carrie can talk a little bit more about how we have different color fastness tests that kind of depend on your use case.
Okay.
Carrie, you're muted.
Thank you. So, on the use case side of things, there's a ton of use cases that are covered. Pretty sure we got most of the bases that you guys will need covered. And for instance, we have color fastness to water that is literally just saying, does dye come off or change or anything when a specimen is put into literally just deionized or distilled water, all the way to very complex lighting situations that mimic different types of sunlight and that sort of stuff. Um, and I just say complex because it's the lighting environment. The test itself is not hard to do. Um, and we have all sorts of different ones. If you guys are curious, you're welcome to come to our headquarters, and me and Gary are happy to show you guys how to perform it in the lab, or we can at least walk you through like one or two methods on that.
Yeah, if you're locally based, you're welcome to come. If you are not based in the Southeast and traveling's a little bit more difficult, then you're also welcome to email Carrie or Gary if you have specific questions on test methods. And of course, you can always funnel questions through me, and my email is just josie@aatcc.org if you have specific test method ones.
Mhm. Yeah, and Teresa White also is great about knowing our methods, that she's usually very up to date on our test methods and just a great resource for that.
I had one more question as far as like the color, the art chroma colors. As far as finding the names of the different colors, would we need to order like a sample of the colors, or how would we get that?
No, yeah, and I can actually show you guys, I think I've got the let me make sure I've got the presentation up. So one of the requirements for the competition, and we can also open the floor to general competition questions if you guys don't have any testing questions, and Gary can help me out, and Gary can help me out on any testing questions. We have a requirement where we have to provide digital color specifications for all colors used in designs as per our Chroma. They are one of our sponsors, and this is one of the ways that you get to use a pretty cool online tool that they provide. Um, you can see that it says provide, this is sort of going into more details. This is part one design of the competition guidelines, which are available on the main website page. If you click this link, you will get a download of the instructions of how to use a very specific resource that it's free for you guys to use. It's fully digital. You don't have to order anything special or anything unique for that. This goes through how to basically register for their online color sample tool. As a student, you get free access. This PowerPoint goes through all the instructions of how to get registered, and it's a free online searching feature where you can look for specific colors, you can look for palettes, you can actually upload maybe inspiration photos that you have that have specific colors you want to use in them, and it'll create a color palette for you. All you have to do is click and download. Something unique about this as well is that it also includes some standards. So blue sign, GOTS, which is the cotton organic or the general organic standard. Ecotex, which is another eco-friendly standard. ZDHC, which is a European equivalent for Ecotex. All of these are sustainable claims too. So if you're looking to use all sustainable dyes and colors in your designs, this is a great resource to use and to do a little check as well. But you are able to download these digital color swatches directly out and just pop them in. I believe it goes to a JPEG straight to your computer. And that's how you'll be describing color in your specific competition entry. I hope that helped.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome, yeah. And also, I recommend if you guys have design and merchandising classes, or if you're just looking for colors, maybe for your Instagram post, then you want to match the text color. It's a really cool resource. I highly recommend using it for your other classes too. Again, it's completely free for you to use as well. Awesome. Do we have any other questions? And again, you are welcome to pop them in the chat. Or of course, raise your hand too. We'd love to hear from you guys. Well, if there's no more questions, thank you all so much for coming today. I know Carrie was talking at the end about some kind of scary potential environmental things that are going on from textiles. We're an industry that we create things, and as we create things, we take up resources, and unfortunately, we cause pollution. As you guys sort of go into your textile careers, you will be making decisions every single day that do have a high impact on sustainability. One of the reasons why we have this competition is to give you guys professional experience, right? Give you guys a chance to make those decisions, to make sustainable decisions, maybe to research and learn a little bit more about where those sustainable decisions can come into play. So we're really excited to see what you guys are coming up with. Really looking forward to seeing any entries for the competition. And if you are not planning on entering the competition, but if you are just a general interest in textile testing, color chemistry, anything like that, we highly recommend that you check out the research committee meetings. Again, there are, I think registration's already open. You can always check our AATCC calendar to see if anything is coming up. You can register to join online or in person if you're able to travel out to Raleigh, North Carolina, where the meetings will be held. And it's a great opportunity to network a little bit and hear a little bit more about the world of test development. Well, that's again, if there's no more questions, that's all from us. Thank you guys so much for attending. I hope you have a great rest of the day. We're letting you guys out a little bit early, so enjoy the little bit of extra time. And if you're having good weather like us, I hope you have a great time outside today. Thanks all. Thank you, Carrie.